Today on The Real Fan Review, we go over the X-Men Dark Phoenix and we give you the latest in the movie news. Welcome to The Real Fan Review. What's going on, podcasters and YouTubers? This is Hob, one of your hosts here from The Real Fan Review. And today we're going over the X-Men Dark Phoenix. We saw this this past week.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And today we're running a three-man weave. But first, as always, we want to thank you for joining us on our conversation, our weekly conversation. So if it's your first time listening, please subscribe. Hopefully you like what you hear. And for anyone that's coming back, we thank you for always coming back to listen to us talk about these things that we love called movies. And today on the show with me, I got my boy Sanj to my right.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is always a pleasure to be with you.
And on sound and hot take, we got my brother B today.
Hey, what's going on?
What's going on, guys? So
man. No man in the chair.
No man in the chair today.
We got no info.
We got no info. We're going in blind.
We got the Wi-Fi set up on all the computers, and Google's right up. Yeah, man. So, I mean, listen, this week we got a chance to watch the X-Men Dark Phoenix. And for everyone who didn't see it just yet, we'll do a non-spoiler thing really quick about it, and then we'll get into spoilers. But before we hit the X-Men Dark Phoenix stuff, we just want to go over what came out in the news this week. And as far as the news goes, something that was kind of a little annoying that I saw that I definitely wanted to bring up with you guys was, I don't know what's going on with fandom lately. It's just a little too much.
Agreed.
There's a petition to Marvel for them to bring back Iron Man because he didn't get his just deserves.
You know what I say to that? I say Marvel did a good job then. Because they sold you on his death. Because if you want him back that bad, that means that they did a great job in their storytelling.
Yeah. What they're saying is that for someone who's been a part of the MCU for so long and has been doing his thing, that the fact that he has a daughter, that now he's living his life the right way, they feel like it wasn't right for him to die. And
It's
I'm
called
like,
foreshadowing.
Saj, what you take on that, man?
With I saw petitions on, people are petitioning for Game of Thrones. People are petitioning for the ending of Iron Man.
I know, man.
I mean, come on, people. Just accept the ending that you got. It was an epic, movie and an epic, coming together of 11 years of storytelling. And if he had to die, they gave him an incredible death.
I know.
Agreed.
Just enjoy it for what it is.
Because think about it also, for all the fans that signed this petition, if he didn't die in this movie, are you okay with someone else playing Iron Man? Because Robert Downey was done.
Yeah.
His contract was over with.
This was the swan song.
Yeah.
Was it,
So I mean that's your alternate option here now. You know what I mean? Because his contract was originally was for just 4 or 5 movies, and then he kept re-upping.
He kept re-upping because it was working, and he needed to make that money too. Robert Downey Jr. needed that money because remember he was on a comeback.
Yeah.
He was on a comeback.
Marvel gave him the chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And then the other thing in the news this week, Wonder Woman put out a poster to tell everybody, hey, we got a year to go.
That outfit is sick.
That's
awesome.
crazy.
She's wearing
it
in that
doesn't look
poster.
like anything Wonder Woman I've ever seen.
I've never seen anything like it, but it looks incredible.
I think that's the most that we've gotten so far.
Because they didn't go to Hall H this year. That's why.
So we're gonna have to wait a couple more months before we see any kind of little trailer.
December, right?
I'm not sure exactly what month it comes out. I know that when the poster came out, it's supposed to be a year. So it should be probably next year, June.
Gotcha.
Yeah, when it comes out. So man in the chair.
Gosh.
That's the man in the chair right there. He tells us when this movie's coming out.
Sitting over there staring at an empty chair. So sad.
And then the last bit of movie news there is Uncharted. That Sony PlayStation game that has the four games, Uncharted.
Yeah.
And I've always said to you personally, I'm like, that's a movie. When I play that game, that's a movie.
Yeah.
That first one alone, that would make a great movie,
I want Dylan McDermott.
Dude, they got Tom Holland.
Okay.
As a teenage Nathan Drake.
No, he's gonna be Nathan Drake. I mean, they haven't said exactly what.
Tom Holland's playing him as an adult?
Well, you guys gotta imagine. Remember, I know he played Spider-Man as a teenager, but Tom Holland's 24 years old.
He plays Spider-Man as like 12 and sells it.
So I mean, I understand, but you know, Nathan Drake was always the older character. I mean, this could be, you know, I'm thinking in the context of the games. You know, in the context of the game, Nathan Drake was an older treasure hunter. You know,
Yeah.
That's
So
why
I mean,
I want Dylan McDermott.
yeah. I mean,
Dylan
Nathan
McDermott's
Fillion.
perfect.
Yes, I know.
Have you ever seen that? There's actually a YouTube trailer that he put out
I have not seen that.
as Nathan Drake.
Wait, I thought that was Nathan Fillion
I-
that did it.
Oh, Nathan Fillion. Dude, I get the two guys confused there.
See, I want Nathan Fillion because even in that movie trailer,
Yeah.
like I've always saw him in the role, and then for him to do it, I was like, oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what we all wanted.
Right,
and he was down
exactly.
for it. And I'm like, let's keep going. So I could see Tom Holland doing the teenage version, and then Nathan Fillion because even those two resemble each other,
A little
you know,
bit, yeah.
facially. So I was like, you know, Tom Holland kind of uses the American accent that he's been using for Spider-Man. It'll definitely pass over. So I'm pushing for Nathan Fillion because I feel like that's perfect for him.
Yeah, and right now the movie's scheduled for December of next year.
That could be really
Not
cool.
too far along.
Okay.
So that's it. I mean, as far as movie news of the week, that was pretty much it. It wasn't too much news going on during the week.
Light week for news, huh?
Yeah, very light week. I was looking every week. You know, I look every day for something. To
I think
talk
everything's because everything's about E3 right now. You know,
Yeah,
I
the
think
video game
people
conference right
people
now.
trying to push things into movie news isn't gonna happen because it's so overshadowed by video games right now.
about. Yeah, man. All right, guys. So I mean, in regards to the movie trailers and the movie news stuff, man, that's pretty much everything that came out from this week. And then now we're just gonna get into that X-Men Dark Phoenix, and like I said, we're gonna get into non-spoilers first, so that we give everybody a chance who hasn't watched it, just to kind of hear our take on it, and then from there we'll go into the spoiler review, and we'll give everybody a heads up. So as far as not spoiling the movie, Brandon, what'd you end up thinking of the movie? How'd you feel about it and everything?
Honestly, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great time. I would say this, you know, it's a departure from the comic book story, but it's the best version they could have made for the big screen for what Fox could do and what they had the meetings for. They made a great story, you know, out of what they could, and I really did enjoy the time. I would say go see it.
All right, and Sanj?
I give it 7.5 to 8 out of 10. Like I really don't understand what Rotten Tomatoes is talking about on this. I mean,
Well, Rotten Tomatoes is an aggregate of a bunch of critics.
yeah. I really don't understand. I saw an article today really putting it out there saying Dark Phoenix has the lowest first weekend box office draw of any of the X-Men movies. I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Same.
Yeah.
Same here.
There's not. I think they had a really good story. I think the characters worked well with each other. I think they gave us a very different look than at the characters than what we're used to. No Wolverine.
Yeah.
It's not often you get an X-Men movie without Wolverine. Was that the only X-Men movie that didn't have Wolverine in it?
I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, basically.
That's the
Yeah.
only one that didn't.
I remember before this, I was wondering how good can an X-Men movie be without Wolverine, right?
Yeah.
Well, hey, I thought it was a pretty damn good X-Men movie. I don't care what anyone else thinks.
And
Exactly.
we said in the movie theater, you know, like
We sat there and we talked about it right afterwards. I'm like,
talked
I can't
about
be
it.
the only one sitting here thinking that this was a good movie.
No, you weren't.
it's like if
definitely.
you're expecting, you know, the comic book version, understand that you need to have an end game level movie to have that comic book
Right.
version.
You had to set
You
that
know?
up over the better part of a decade
You're like-
with build up and everything because
Yeah,
that's the type of
That's-
build up that
that's
they
such
had in
an
the comic
in-depth
books.
comic,
Yeah.
you know, like because you have to remember that the Dark Phoenix aspect of the Phoenix Force storyline took a while to get there. There's a lot of story, a lot of space, a lot of trial, you know, in space. They went on court. You know, they held her accountable for the destruction of planets. You know, and the X-Men had to duke it out on a basically on trial and had to face somebody, you know, and she intervened and was like, no, I'm not worth it, you know. So like to get that storyline took the better part of a year to 2 years, you know, in the comics.
That's a lot, and there's a lot of crossovers in it
And that's
too.
a lot of time, you know.
Right.
So
So that's something that they had to develop through. Like, if this movie maybe had 2 parts of it,
yeah.
it probably would be even better.
No, but it's not. It's not just that. The whole what B is saying is like the whole purpose of the X-Men storytelling had to be to lead up to that with X-Men. X-Men has been a whole separate thing for a long time, and they were bringing that separate thing to its conclusion, bringing these actors to their conclusion, the characters to their conclusion in this iteration.
And this was their story they chose to tell, you know. So
Apocalypse would have been a good way to do that, but they bombed on Apocalypse. That was a horrible story. We know that was a
Yeah,
horrible
that was
story.
done well.
But this was good. I really hope that the issue with the movie is not based around not liking the women in the movie taking such a big role.
Yeah, I mean, no. The thing I've heard is the story isn't done well. That the actors seem like they didn't care. That some of the scenes look terrible. They were saying a lot of different things, but that wasn't one of it.
Remember, the story's subjective, right? Everybody can have their own version of what a good story is.
Right.
I in no way, shape, or form felt like the actors weren't putting their all into it.
I didn't get that feel either.
Even the portrayal from Nightcrawler, like his emergence as a character from the beginning to the end of the movie, you know,
he went.
That's great alone. Like, you know, like we'll get there. I know.
Yeah,
we'll get there.
It's hard to sit here and talk about it without
we'll get there quick.
The portrayal, like I would say, the only character who didn't have two characters, I would say, they didn't have the most growth, but did display good acting. Were Cyclops' character and Storm's characters. Like, if you think about the story in itself, they only lent their hand to so many scenes that they were needed to do. But I mean, they're still acting when and their portrayal of their parts was really good.
They really were, though.
You know, so yeah, maybe their parts were smaller than you would think,
but none of it was insignificant.
Exactly.
So I mean, I know I've come across a little upset about this, and I am a little bit upset about it because you said this too. It feels like people are either looking to either really love something or hate on something.
Yeah, it's never anything in the middle. There's no gray anymore. It's black and white, hate and love, and it's awesome or it sucks.
And it's hate because it's not the way they wanted it.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to get to on my part of this is that, you know, throughout my movie experiences, one of the first thing I always do is listen to the reviews of these movies, you know, because I want to know what I'm spending my money on. What am I going to get by spending almost $20 per ticket, right? So I look at the reviews, I listen to, you know, these same usual guys, you know, Jeremy Johns, John Campia, IGN, Cinema Blend. You know, I get an average of what everyone's thinking of these movies, not to just make my perception of the movie be whatever theirs is. It's just to hear what they thought of the movie so I know what to kind of look for, or if I should be like super excited before I see a movie, you know? And I have to say that I wasn't super excited to see X-Men. Even before I left, my wife's like, "Oh, are you excited to see this movie?" And I'm like, they're killing it online, so I'm not sure, but I'm still gonna see it.
To my girlfriend,
yeah, I'm still gonna see it because it's the last X-Men. You know, the last X-Men for God knows how long, and you know, this is the last time that Fox has these characters. So I want to see the end because I've been committed for how many years now? More than
2000.
10. Yeah, so it's definitely plenty of years invested into these characters. So I want to see this. And I remember in the middle of the movie, I leaned over to Brandon and I'm like, it's not sucking yet.
Like we got through the first act and the second act, and I'm like, this is pretty good, you know?
And I don't know if it was the expectation that it was going to be this terrible movie that they're sitting, I'm waiting for it to start to like dip down, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is awesome. Okay, this is awesome. Okay, it should be getting to shit right now. And I'm like, no, I'm actually liking all of this.
Like I went in expecting to completely hate the third act.
Me too. I wouldn't expect it to hate the whole movie.
But again, not saying that critics shouldn't do what they do.
No, they do.
All about free speech. But then they pan it. And then it sort of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where they pan it and then people are like, I'm not going to go see it. And then, well, it doesn't do well at the box office. Then they point a finger at, well, you see, it sucked because nobody went to see it. No, nobody went to see it because you said
told
it
them
sucked.
Not to,
yeah.
You know?
And that's the thing they don't understand sometimes. That they think that their voice, no one's really listening to it. I know so many people who are like, everybody said it sucks. So listen, did I see Hellboy? No. Why did I see Hellboy? I was ready to go see Hellboy that night, and then I heard it got a 4.
Yeah.
Well,
from a couple places.
To be fair, the trailers did look like trash.
And well, that too. But hearing their reviews made me even more not want to go see it, and I ended up not seeing it.
But remember what we talked about with Dark Phoenix.
Right.
That we were hearing that it was going to be trash, and then we saw the trailers, and then like, but it looks really good.
That last trailer did it for everybody.
Yeah.
That last trailer sold me.
So I'm just like, I'm still going to go see it because the trailers didn't match what people were saying about it, and then my personal opinion of it did not match what critics' opinion of it was going in to the movies. maybe it needs to be where they just go back to not screening movies and like the critics got to see it.
Well, they tried to, man. They held the review embargo until the day before. So they really did try to not let the people see it. And that usually means the company or the studio doesn't have faith in the movie. So they don't want people to go by what the reviewers are saying. So they put out the review embargo like a day before the movie comes out. But I have to say, man, I ended up really enjoying this movie. And again, and I put this on our social media page. It wasn't a great movie, but it wasn't terrible and it wasn't bad. It was really good.
It was a very good movie.
I really enjoyed it.
And that's okay. Not everything is going to be Endgame.
Exactly. And that was exactly what I put down. It's not an Endgame movie and it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
And you know what I appreciate about the movie, which isn't a spoiler, but there wasn't a lot of humor in this movie.
No.
It was straightforward. This is what we're going through. This is what's happening. Look at what's happening because of this. And we're getting through this movie together. Like, let's see how this happens or how we put it all together. And I just thought the way they handled everything, to me, it never crawled. The movie just kept going. It was just like a little flow to it. It slowed down a little bit in the middle. And then when it got to that third act, oh, forget it. It was just awesome, man. It took off, man. And, if anyone listening out there hasn't seen this movie and you're not seeing this movie because of the ratings or what you're hearing about this movie, which is weird because I'm going to tell you, listen to me now. I actually say, go check it out for yourself. And in my way of reviewing movies, I don't do the stars and I don't do the 0.2s and the 7.2 and then this and that. To me, the movie is you should see it. If you're an X-Men fan, if you've watched X-Men 1, 2, or you've seen Days of Future Past and First Class, don't stop yourself and not see this movie now. You should still go see this movie because it's a good X-Men movie. And it's a good way to finish off this X-Men saga with these characters, with James McAvoy, with Michael Fassbender. It's a good send-off for them. I think it's a good movie. I think you should see it. Don't expect anything like something spectacular. It's still good. It's really good. But I think if you level your expectations of what this movie's going to be, just understand it's a good time at the theater. Yeah. I had a great time watching this movie with my 4 boys, my 3 boys here. Yeah. So it was a great time.
Agreed.
And again, if I could tell people to watch it, yeah, you should see this movie. I don't think you need to see this movie, but you should watch this movie, especially in the theaters because it's out there right now. You'd have to wait like 3 months to see it otherwise. All right, man. Well, listen, it's getting too hard to talk about this movie without getting into spoilers.
Thank you.
Again, everyone, if you're listening, we definitely suggest that you watch this movie. Go check it out. It's a good movie, and it's a nice way to end that whole X-Men Fox Marvel, franchise there. So right now, we're gonna give it to the count of 5 to pause, come back, and then we'll get into those X-Men Dark Phoenix spoiler review. And we go in 5,
4,
3,
2,
1.
Spoiler alert!
Oh, man. So here we are at the X-Men spoiler review. This movie was good. It was really good.
It was good. That first act had me. Because you've never seen a first act of X-Men. You've never seen an X-Men story start that way.
Right. It's always some real big action scene to start off the movie.
Yeah.
It had the look of a Godfather movie, kind of just the way the characters moved and the sets and everything. It felt Godfatherish.
Yeah.
It felt un-X-Men like.
It really did. It didn't feel like a number X-Men. And mind you, it was directed and written by the same guy who's been almost writing or been a part of
Simon
all the
Kinberg,
X-Men movies. So it was very interesting to see because we started off with
Jean Grey's story,
with the car accident.
But then them going to the X Mansion, the Xavier, and him picking up the X phone, a call from the president saying we need your help. That's not an X-Men thing.
No.
They've never you know, if you know X-Men
They
comics,
stole that straight out of Batman.
yeah.
That's a
They
Batman
stole
thing.
that straight out of Batman.
That's like
X-phone.
it's like knowing the X-Men story. Like it's so funny when you think about X-Men comics, because in the Marvel universe of comics, you know, they have all these heroes that are loved. Captain America, Iron Man, everyone's loved, but the X-Men are the mutants. Oh, these mutants, we hate the mutants. Anti-mutant registration, you know, all this stuff, and just
Yeah.
like, and they living in the same exact world, hated for being superheroes at the same time. And what was the first thing that they had to talk about? Like, Charles was like, he goes, you know, you keep calling us superheroes. He's just like,
Right, he's
you
like,
know,
it's better than what you used to call us.
Exactly.
And everybody started laughing. And then they cut to him and Mystique having it out as well. And and when she puts the magazine down in front of his face, she's like, you like this, don't you?
mm-hmm.
And he's just like, and he's skirting around it, right? And he's like, oh, but this and that and the other. And she's like, admit it, Charles, you like this. And he's like, of course I like it. I mean, he loses it. He's like,
Yeah.
of course I like it. He's like, you mean not being hunted and actually being, integrated into society?
called it a
Yes, of course.
necessary evil.
He's like, of course I like this. And she's like, yeah, well, we do all the hard work while you go around accepting awards, right? And one of the best lines out of the movie, when she says to him, you know what? Maybe you should change the name of the group from X-Men, because the women around here are always saving the men's asses. I was like, wow.
Yeah, that was a little.
Wow.
Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
That was a lot. But I mean, like, that's a testament to, you know, what we know about the X-Men is just like, they've never been in this light. So
No.
to see them in this light, I would be the same egotistic guy too, because
because it's working.
because at this point in time, like, he's almost, I mean,
That was his whole thing. Is like, if we do this right, this
Yeah.
is what will happen, and we'll be integrated in society. But then she reminds him, we're always
One
one
bad
bad day away from
Exactly.
all of this changing. She's like, all it'll take is one bad day, Charles.
And
one
if
bad day.
And let me just say this: if all it takes is just one bad day, then what you have is it really based on a foundation of honesty and a foundation of you can trust us and we can trust you?
yeah.
No.
This was the
Yeah.
basis of Civil War. It was, you know, the whole Sokovia Accords were basically like, oh, the Avengers, you went around and saved us here and there, this. Oh, but look at how many people died in the process because of what you did.
Exactly.
Yo, when
you
they
know.
had that count up, oh
Yeah.
my god.
You know, and and it's like, oh, because of what you did, because of that one time in Wakanda where you went and did the right thing, but you know, just you did one slight miscalculation and all these people died in this building. Well, let's remind you about all the people who died here because of you.
Right.
Even though you saved everyone here. So, like, you know, it was very interesting because that line and the whole tag of how things were starting off in that whole first act was so new
Right.
that it felt
the applause,
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
the adulate that is not the accolades.
Adulation.
The
You read it, right?
adulation,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, when they came out
Adoration could be a good word
of
too.
when they came out of the plane from saving the astronauts.
Yeah.
The people out there cheering. They had the
They had
dolls.
dolls, you know,
of the
action
X-Men,
figures. That's
yeah.
something you would never see in the comic book.
Exactly. So it was just like it was very cool to see that.
Cool
And,
take.
and I have to also say that at the space scene when Jean Grey got taken by the Phoenix Force and even the astronauts being saved, dude, that was so awesome. I thought Nightcrawler has been used great before. This might be the best that he's been used in this movie.
I think-
Nightcrawler with the Banff, and then it just turns into a little mist.
Yes.
Oh my god, that looks so freaking cool.
I liked it. I like how it worked well with Mystique being so in charge and calling the shots.
Yeah.
You know, and she even at times when she wasn't necessarily sure of it, like she was portraying leadership, she was portraying strength. And then especially when right before the mission when her and Jean go at it, when Jean tells her like, if you tell me that we're good, I'm good.
Right.
Even if you don't believe it yourself. And even though she was coming across real confident, I like that so much where, you know, where she's like, she could, even though
Like,
she
I
could get,
forgot you could read minds.
yeah, exactly, you know, and I thought that was so great because I've, you know, from being in situations where I've dealt with very strong leaders that, you know, I've learned a lot from, and just knowing them personally and knowing them well enough personally to know even when they're confident or they look confident, like they're not exactly sure.
Yeah.
Right.
And then being in those positions myself, like you just got to always maintain your cool, and just seeing Mystique do it, seeing that was incredible because we'd never seen her do anything. We'd never really seen anybody in charge other than Charles.
Yeah.
Because even when Scott Summers, you know, is in charge, he's he's kind of the guy.
He's always got like second command.
Yeah, and in the
Tell me
other
what I have to do.
right
I'll
in
say
the
it.
other iterations of X-Men, he's kind of a wuss. His character's kind of a wuss.
You know what? And that's something I hope they change when they get to X-Men in the Marvel universe, because Cyclops is a leader.
Yeah, in the
comic
comics,
books, he's a leader.
no, and then he can be very vicious. And you see it in the comic. He can be very vicious
Yeah.
also with how.
Isn't in the comics Cyclops is like a dick in
Yeah.
certain aspects? Like
Yeah.
he's like
He's always an
he's
asshole.
straightforward, right?
He's very straightforward. He's an
That's
asshole.
what I remember him being, and I'm like, they make him look like this like
wuss.
little
Soft.
wimp.
Like,
Yeah.
he's soft.
And I'm like, this
I mean,
is
Wolverine
Cyclops,
comes
the
right
leader
in
of
and
the
takes his
X-Men.
girl.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Like even in this movie, there was a scene where something happened with Jean Grey, and it looked like he was about to cry. He was like lip was quivering, and I'm like, dude, come on, she's right there. She says she's okay. You know? But I mean, it was really cool. I mean, is there anything part of the beginning that whole rescue the astronaut scene that you like besides like Nightcrawler scene? Romanoff got his little Speed Force thing going. Not Speed Force, but his
His scene, in
the way that he sees everything.
I mean, I like the dialogue between Hank and Mystique when they were in the X-Jet, and he was just like, listen, we got these new thrusters, but I don't know if they're going to get into space. And as they're going off, I'm like, oh, this is cool. And the whole sequence, because you could see like the shock in his face, like, I don't know if this is going to make it, but I guess we're going to try, you know?
Yeah.
So getting them into space alone, that was cool, and then it was just like, all right, let's carry out our mission. So I thought that was really cool. And just the
I
whole
think
sequence there.
because I was sitting next to you, Sanj. No, I wasn't sitting. I was sitting next to Al and Brandon, but I saw your reaction to something, which was Professor X pushing them to save the astronauts when they weren't sure that they could save the astronauts. And then also Professor X then saying we leave no man behind when they're telling him, hey, we're not going to make it. And he goes, we leave no one behind. So at the risk of one of the kids, he still pushed it. And I saw you react to it. And was it that he was pushing these people too much that he almost valued the other lives more than his students?
he was valuing his vision at that point more than he was valuing the individuals, right? And the best way I can explain it is someone valuing the legacy of their family more than they value the members of their family. And it really took, no, you're right, it really took me aback because
I saw you react to that part.
Because to me, remember, I got introduced to Professor X as Patrick Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, Patrick Stewart is Captain Picard.
Yeah.
That is not something Captain Picard would ever do. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
And as much as it was James McAvoy playing the Professor X character, they've done this X-Men story and interweaved it well enough where I know James McAvoy becomes Patrick Stewart. So I still see Patrick Stewart and when I see Professor X.
Yeah, you associate
And
the
everything I
characters,
associate with Patrick Stewart and Professor X, it was a total departure from all that. But again, we're seeing more of them, right? He didn't become Charles Xavier, 60-year-old Charles Xavier, without that 60 years that came before it. He's going to make mistakes. That's what I'm saying. It was so great to see them make mistakes and be called out for making the mistakes.
That was a different take on this.
Right.
Because even myself, when I saw him say, don't leave anyone behind, I'm like, they just told you they're not going to make it. So you're risking... Like, I don't know the age ranges of the kids.
They're not kids. At this point, they're not kids. A couple of movies ago, they were kids.
Right.
So now let's say they're in their early 20s, mid-20s, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Still no offense,
young.
B. Still kids,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
For someone at Charles's age, like, because those are his children at that point. Then would be that age. So for him, they'll always be kids, no matter how old they are.
Right.
But they weren't children at that point. But at the same time, they're not as old as Mystique, and Mystique is like, listen, Charles, these are still kids.
Right.
And you're putting children at risk. And Charles is going, oh, but they're not children anymore, blah, 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 blah. And he's risking their lives.
Yeah, because he made that call.
Right. Because he's like, well, if we can just do this, well, then they'll love us. They'll love us. And what is really happening, they'll love me. And you really get that feeling that that's what's going on in Charles.
Really big
the
part of that
ego.
first pack.
Yeah, because it felt like more than just protecting mutants. It felt like he was enjoying this limelight of
And
being...
how do we keep
Being
that?
a hero. He was enjoying being a hero, right? even when he was giving the speech at the award ceremony, this world that I've built.
Yes, I heard that, and I'm like, this
And
one I built.
And I sat back too when I heard him say it. I'm like, really, Professor X? Really, Charles?
This was a different.
You built
take on
this?
Professor
And you have
X,
to think
man.
about even though we've changed the timeline from Days of Future Past, this was 1992. This is only 8 years away from the first X-Men movie because that did take place in the year 2000.
Right.
So we're only 8 years away. I mean, even though the actors, the looks didn't really match up to that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
freedom's
We'll
there.
let them go
but
with
like,
this one.
we're 8
Artistic
years away
license.
from that point. So it's like you're 8 years away from that Wolverine. You're 8 years away from what they were trying to do in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to think about where they come from. And yes, they changed the timeline, so maybe that
I don't think they did
happen.
I don't think they did change the timeline again. Because remember,
They
when-
definitely changed
in-
timeline because
no.
Dark Phoenix wouldn't have come.
not necessarily. Because in Days of Future Past, right? We're dealing with the older version of the characters,
Yeah.
right? That's what we're dealing with in Days of Future Past at the end, right? Jean could have come back. Remember, she didn't die. She could have
said at the end she didn't die.
In that time period, she could have learned how to control it.
Yeah.
So that she could take human form again and everything. In that time frame, because the ending of Days of Future Past takes place after Dark Phoenix.
Yeah.
Because
It'll
remember,
essentially take
Charles
place
comes,
after all of
because Charles comes back and is back at the school and everything. All of this takes place after that. If we're going on a timeline,
Yeah.
right? It's not necessarily clear. They didn't do anything in the movie that specifically changes the timeline. It still could all work out that way.
Mm-hmm.
It still could all lead to that, which pisses me off. That then it could still lead to Logan.
Truth.
Yeah,
They needed
that's true.
if they change that timeline, that needs to be, because that pisses me off to.
They'll get started
Yeah.
on that.
But
Which
I agree.
It was a great, but Logan was a great movie, and I loved the story, except for that one thing just kept gnawing at me.
Because you know how it ends.
What was it all for?
Yeah.
If he has a nightmare and kills everybody,
And now knowing that she possibly comes back and controls the Phoenix Force, like now this most powerful mutant in the world is killed
Kaputnik.
by a dream. By a dream, so like I see your point, and I'll always agree with it too, because Logan did do that. It did change your perception of what's our point.
And then they're back to being hunted again,
Yeah.
right? When does shit end?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. It's a cycle. Which
but-
which happens
yeah.
in the movie too, because think about it, they ended up getting hunted, but we'll get to that point
Yeah.
there. So right now we're back at the school there after Jean absorbs the Phoenix Force in the outer space there.
Yeah.
And we get down to Earth, and we see that Jean Grey's not handling whatever's happening to her. She knows something's weird. She knows something's off.
Nice cameo by Dazzler, by the way.
Dazzler,
Right.
right? That's the first time
That
we've
was
seen Dazzler out there.
First time ever.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute, that's Dazzler. I mean,
She
that's
had the
an
uniform,
old
too.
School, that's
She
an
was
old school
one of
character
the
right
most
there.
original X-Men. You
Yeah.
know?
What's good about that scene too, right before it all the kids are out in the woods having a good time,
Yeah.
and even though they're mutants with these extraordinary powers, you just see them being kids.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You haven't really seen that in an X-Men
Even
movie before.
Beast says that to Mystique. He's just like, remember we used to do that. You
Yeah.
know,
He's
just
like,
hang
we're
out
the
and
last
have
of the
fun.
first class,
Yeah.
Yeah, last of the
You know,
first class.
and just
think
to
about that.
just
That's
to see
crazy.
those kids getting to be kids again, nothing we've seen from an X-Men movie before.
Mhm.
I feel like they really tried to immerse us in the world of being
the mutants
a
in that
mutant
school.
at that school as a child, right? But in the movie, they tried to give us the experience of showing up at the school for the first time. Jean at the beginning, like what it would be like, what kind of trauma you would go through, and everything. And then here comes this guy who's saying, "Well, I have a place for you where you don't have to feel like this," right? So from showing up at the school, maybe not necessarily in all the right order, right? To what a day in your life at the school might look like, or maybe a few days in your life might look at school. Like you will go to class. We've seen a lot of that.
Right. we've
They're in
seen the
school.
schools
Like
and
you
the
just
training,
get this kind of feeling that it's a school.
Yeah.
This movie, it felt like a home
Mm-hmm.
for and you really got that feel like they were there and they were at home and they were safe and being cared for, and then to the point where you grow up there as well, and when Beast and Mystique are talking about it, now they've grown up and they're looking back at the kids and they're reflecting on their time, and now they're there as well, and they're thinking about, well, should we move on? Right?
And they were about to. Yeah, he changed her mind.
It's like and then one of them is saying, well, this is our job. This is what we've done all this for. But then they're like, but isn't the whole point of like this so that we could go out and live in the world too?
Right. Yeah.
Are we supposed to just stay here? And you really get a feel for like these are the kind of questions that if we were mutants at Xavier School, some of us might want to stay and become the teachers and nurture this environment. And some of us would want to be like, hey, let's go out.
And thank you for giving us this.
Right, yeah,
we can go live now.
and just living in the world. But remember, they had been so used to each other and being close to each other. Mm-hmm. They're both having a hard with the concept of leaving or staying. One wants to leave, one wants to stay, right? But neither of them can quite adjust to the idea of doing either thing without the other person.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where the hard thing would come out. And I sorry to take this in this direction. No. I remember feeling like that when I went to college.
Right.
Because remember, I was the only one that went away. Right? And we had talked about this and whatever. And it's like, everyone else was staying. So I'm just like, maybe I should just stay and go to, a local school and whatnot. And then we'd still all be together and whatnot. And then you guys were like, nah, dude, like, you're getting an opportunity to, like, go and see different things and do different things. Absolutely. Like, you guys are like, no, you have to go. You have to, like, do this. You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember all of this. Right. I mean, like, it brought a lot of that. It brought a lot of that back. I mean, and at the end of it, here we are. Right. Still doing
absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the love of movies right there, man. Yeah. Movies does that for us. It brings us back to a time and a place sometimes, and other times it's just pure enjoyment.
Yeah,
and that's what the love of movies comes from. But in regards to the movie now, after this party is going on, it looks like something happens to Jean Grey. She just starts to get angry. Was it because she wasn't feeling well and Scott was telling her to calm down, or to what happened there?
I think it was like the power was like affecting her emotions. So whether she was feeling something or not, it was just anything inside of her, because her blocks were now disappearing. She was remembering things. There's rage was coming out, rejection was coming out. So all these emotions, those heavy emotions, were just all stockpiling at her at once because she was feeling it for the first time, and it just all came out.
And then that's when Professor X, I believe, tried to go into her mind to try to see if he could chill her out. And then he's going through her mind, and Mystique is like, what are those things that are on her mind? Is that what a normal mind looks like? And he's like, no, I put up walls in there.
Yeah.
And she's like, you did what?
What did you do, Charles?
What did you do? And I'm like, what did he do?
Yeah.
Like,
and like if you know from the comics, like this is what he did. He put up kind of this big wall that suppressed all these memories inside of it, and so everything operated around this. And once that force hit her, boom! Everything. She had this huge surge of a new acknowledgence in her mind that her synapses acted in a different way, and those walls, because they were weak compared to what she could now do, dissipated.
Now, do you think he was completely on the wrong on that, or do you get what he was trying to do?
I mean, you take it from a father's point of view. If something happened to you,
wow, hot take.
Brandon's
the only one here that doesn't have children, and he just really threw it back on us. Take it from a father's point of view. You guys are fathers. Hot take.
Like imagine, like he went to that hospital, and the first thing he did was talk to the parent. He knew that Jean was a mutant, and the father said, "I don't want anything to do with her." And he tried to convince her, like, listen, we can take her in and help her and this and that. He's like, no, I don't want her. He's like, if you can take her, take her. And he was upset. You saw the scene. He was visibly upset. He was like, because he knew he was disowning his daughter who needed help. Right. So he took over that father role for her. And yeah, I mean, if you take it from the role of a father, wouldn't you do what you could to protect your kid?
Of course. You try to protect them from any harms in the world.
And so,
but he wasn't honest.
And that's where it comes to bite. He wasn't honest, but he did what he needed to do for her.
I think he did the only thing you could possibly do in that situation.
Right.
How do you explain to a child that at that age, whether parents are good or not, kids love their parents when they're young, because that's the only thing
that's the only thing they know.
Children just have that inherent love in them. Like, children don't know wrong stuff. So now, this child has just lost her mother, right? How would she feel? How would it affect her, knowing that her father's alive and does not want her?
Exactly.
She feels guilty enough as is, right? now knowing that the only parent she has left blames her, right? How would she feel? Charles had no other choice. In that moment, he had no other choice. He's like, well, if he doesn't want her, the best thing is for her to think he's dead. Because that's the reality is he is dead to her. He doesn't want her.
Right.
As a father, he has given up his child. He has given up on his child.
Yeah.
Right? So Charles didn't do that.
No.
The father did that.
But he was trying to protect her. But, I guess that's the hard part, because I see what Mystique was saying. Like, what did you do and why? Like what,
Well, here's the thing. That's Jean's business.
Right.
Right? I can see Charles being. You want me to be the bad guy? Fine. You can call me the bad guy. But I'm not going to put her on blast. I'm not going to put her business out there.
Yeah. Because the only thing he could have done is maybe possibly, as she was getting older, then explain everything to her.
But think about it like this. It may have gone over a different way if she hadn't had the Phoenix. Because the Phoenix was making those levels of thought so much more active. All those emotions were heightened so much more because of the Phoenix. So if this was a conversation they had at her age regardless, without the Phoenix,
right,
it may have gone over a lot better. Like,
right,
if she had found out whatever, they probably would have talked it out. But because of the Phoenix Force within her,
exactly,
everything was heightened.
Yeah, and then she said, "I can hear him."
Yeah,
and he's like, "Who?" She's like, "My father. He's alive."
Yeah,
and Scott's like, "What?" And then he tried to stop her, and she said, "Sleep."
Yeah. She was like, "Good night."
He just dropped.
Hit better like
wuss.
Oh, we'll get into Scott not being a wuss. At one point, he grabbed his cojones and said some shit. I don't really yell in movie theaters, and I don't really like.
I remember you had a moment
when he said that. I said, "Holy shit!" So, she puts him to sleep, and she goes off, and Professor X can't seem to get into Jean's mind.
Well, no, because she has the same power as Charles, but she's stronger than Charles,
especially. With
and then she's stronger than Charles to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
she just doesn't know how to control it.
Right.
And then you get the Phoenix Force on top of that. Nothing can control her.
Now you're times 10 that.
Yeah,
I think it's a little bit more than 10, but anyways.
And then Scott goes, "We got to go get her," and Professor X says, "All right, let's get the jet." They're like, "How do you know where she's going?" He's like, "I know where she's going."
Yeah.
And she ends up back into her old home.
Yeah.
In did they say where it was? Was it like in Pittsburgh? For some reason, I thought it was like Pittsburgh or Philadelphia for some reason. But they get back to the home, and she gets to see her dad. And Dad opens the door. Dad looks like
look very disheveled.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. But he lets her in, and he talks to her. And everything seems somewhat normal. I mean, it doesn't look like he's too excited to see her, but at the same time, he is talking to her and everything. And then she goes to the wall and see all these pictures of just her mom.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing of her.
Yep.
And that's when she gets pissed the fuck off. She's like, "There's no pictures of me." And that's when he tells her the truth, man. And that's insane, man. I can't believe he actually said it and went there. And she tore shit up.
Yeah. And the X-Men showed up right there.
And the X-Men try to save her.
And what happens next is rough.
Yeah. The X-Men try to stop her from doing more damage to the house or whatever. And they try to help her out. Mystique goes up to her, try to be her friend and tell her, "Hey, I'm not leaving you behind." Mm-hmm. And she's trying to fight them back, saying, "Leave me alone." And this,
you missed the critical part.
Yeah, go for it,
before Mystique doing that, because Hank has the gun or whatever, the neutralizing tranquilizer that they can use on her, and Charles stops him and says,
"Freezes time on him.
Let Mystique try."
Yeah.
Not time, sorry, but...
And he forcibly stops Hank, like B was saying. He freezes him. He uses his power because Hank was not gonna let this go down like that. Mm-mm. He's like, "No, we're gonna take her back. We're gonna do something."
Right.
Yeah. But no, but
another bad call.
It's just Professor X just kept making, and that sets up stuff with him and Hank for later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because this is right after Hank and Mystique were having the conversation about leaving.
Yeah. Right.
And
so
Hank is the one that convinced her. No, we need to stay and do this.
Mm-hmm.
It takes me back to the scene with Black Widow and Hulk. I'm Bruce Banner.
Uh-huh.
Remember
Yeah.
when she's just like, let's just leave. Let's just go. You know.
Yeah, right. That's from
Age of Ultron.
Age of Ultron, and then all the way down to Endgame. You came and you went. But yeah, man. So Professor X gave Mystique a shot, and so did Jean Grey. Right into what was it? I think she broke some of the house. No,
Yeah, it was just like
it's like broken wood or something.
Wood that had come out in spikes, and
Yeah, and it just
pushed-
right through her chest, impaled her right there, man.
and
It
then
was-
she dies right there.
Yeah, that was insane. I honestly, in that scene, and when I was watching the previews, I thought she killed the Quicksilver. I thought she
okay.
killed the Romanoff because in the trailers it looks like he was running up something to get to her.
No,
and
yeah,
then-
he was.
And then
he,
she
he,
goes.
Yeah,
to
he was
this.
quick enough to like run up on pieces of debris,
Oh,
and she just pushes him to the side, and like,
He
yeah,
just-
Which is interesting because that takes him out of the rest of the movie.
yeah, because he gets like like major street. Is it street burn?
he had a Kevin Durant level injury.
Road burn.
Whatever it was bad. He looked paralyzed. Like, it
Oh
was
my
bad.
God.
So.
He looked like he was bad. Yeah, he was injured bad. And so we get Mystique's ending right there, man. Mystique passes away right there in that fight scene,
Yeah.
and Jean Grey flies off, which that was pretty weird to see. She literally like flew off like Superman.
She did the Peter Petrelli from
What is that show called?
Heroes.
Heroes. I used to
Heroes,
watch
yeah.
that. I love that.
Pulled the
show.
Peter Petrelli's woof.
Yeah, man. So she goes off, and then the X-Men go back home with their heads low, man, and they just lost someone.
Yeah, the scene of Beast walking off the plane with Mystique's body just covered up.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And then the argument he has with
Charles.
He
Charles in
said,
the kitchen.
Charles, admit it. Just
You
admit
were
you
wrong.
That's all
fucked
he
up.
wanted was he was literally just say
Just
you're
in that
wrong.
moment, you were wrong.
And he couldn't do it.
That ego had taken over
yeah.
so much, and like it was just really, I liked it, but it was still really hard to see Professor X like that.
Right?
Yeah.
To see this different, like, cocky... I've never seen Professor X like that, and I appreciate it, man, because it's a good, different take.
Yeah.
Who wants to see the same thing all the time? This is a nice, different
When you
take
think
on the
about
movie.
X1, X2, X3, you have this nurturing man.
Yeah.
Not one bad bone. Like, even in X3, when the revelations that it's same thing, he put the walls in her mind, it still came from a good place. Like, it was still that nurturing father. So, like, this take, I mean, even Days of Futures Past was a different take on Charles Xavier, so have those two different versions of him, it was like, it's interesting to see because you've never had that before.
Exactly. It's really good to see it, man. Especially, like, I always tell people, like, if you've seen the other X-Men, especially the First Class and Days of Future Past, you owe it to yourself to see this one, man. This one's really good. So we get to her leaving. Now, this is one of the things that people think were really bad in the movie, and I can kind of see it because even us right now, we've completely, like, left off this one aspect of the movie, which is this alien race that's after the Phoenix Force, that wants the Phoenix Force for their use because apparently the Phoenix Force destroyed their planet. So they're trying to take it and use it themselves to either change Earth or to create more life or something like that.
They wanted to recreate their own planet.
And that was Jessica Chastain's character. She
Yeah,
was the
Vuk.
lead alien of this race. And I could see what people were saying about this group, because if you took them out of the film like we just did for the last 20 minutes talking about this movie,
Yeah.
this movie is still good, and I think things still happen.
Yeah.
So adding them in wasn't anything special. And at the end, I think I'm going to tell you guys something that I think the movie would have done better if it wasn't the aliens, if it had been this other group instead. And I'll get to that.
Well, and if you've read the Phoenix comics, they're
the race,
They
yeah.
are a race that is affected by the Dark
Don't
Phoenix.
they look like
The Dark-
broccoli?
Yeah, they look like Groots. They look like a bunch of Groots.
Like
Yeah.
broccoli.
If you Google what these what is it, diary
the DR was I forget what it was.
Ow! Oh, God! damn.
Shots. So it's like
No man
in the
chair
comic,
today.
the Dark Phoenix harvests their planet for energy.
Yeah.
So no, they don't go on a quest to get their planet back. They just go on a quest to destroy the Phoenix.
Yeah.
That's the way they do in the comic. So it was appropriate to have them, as we would want a different alien race in this movie for different reasons. At least they included some part of the comic.
Yeah.
You know.
It was that, like I said, it was cool because it is part of the story in the comic books. But again, the way that they put him into the movie is like they could have been any alien race. They could have been anything, and it wouldn't have changed or done anything.
We weren't invested in them.
Not at all.
In any way. But I mean, think about this. In Captain Marvel, they threw in the Kree and the Skrulls, you know, as well.
I think it was done better though, the Skrulls, and at least you cared about the Skrulls in Captain Marvel. In this movie, we didn't really care about the aliens. I mean, I didn't really care about them. But
I say it's just the typical Fox treatment of a villain, in a sense. Like
no
the same thing
depth.
with Apocalypse, no depth to Apocalypse.
Yeah.
You know, like our villain of Days of Future Past was who? You know, the government. Like it's like okay, you know, and then Sebastian Shaw in First Class wasn't really compelling. He just had the helmet,
right.
You know. So I think it's just their treatment of villains that overarching the story.
Right.
So like, yes, they added this element from the comics in as the overarching villain of the story with the Phoenix, but just not developed enough.
Gotcha.
But maybe it was due to time. You know, this movie was what, an hour and a half?
Yeah, it was about a little bit more than an hour and a half.
So, you know, with the time that they had, could you say they could successfully set up a story with those villains and the Dark Phoenix? Kind of like X3 where they try to set up the anti-music registration and then Dark Phoenix at the same time. So I think it kind of goes with those. But they delved into having them both combined, which was a good part, whereas X3 was we have these two storylines that really aren't going to connect until the very end where it just barely connects. This was like, okay, this alien race is here for this reason, and they're going to interact. So that I think that worked the best for
X3, them. Jean as Dark Phoenix was basically a prop.
Yeah.
You know, she
didn't do anything.
She just kind of, I mean, when Magneto had his crew in the woods, and she really literally just stood there.
Right.
You know? And at the end, she stood there fucking everybody up, and Wolverine had to kill her. Yeah. She was a prop.
Yeah.
Agreed. And this one gave life for, you know.
And by the way, what did you guys think of Sophie Turner's turn as Dark Phoenix, Jean Grey?
Loved it.
I think it's great.
She did great to me.
And we talked about, you know, Sophie Turner as relating to, you know, how would she act in this movie coming off of that Game of Thrones season. And it was interesting because we assumed she was just going to be darker and evil, you know, but she was just a character struggling the entire time with what either she did or what she had inside her, and either she wanted to accept it or wanted it out, you know. So it wasn't really an evil Dark Phoenix. It was just a character struggling with what they had in them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was good, man. So where we left off just now is with Mystique passing away and you know Jean Grey flying off, and she ends up going to find Magneto, where Magneto's staying. Now I heard you guys yell out Genosha.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's Genosha.
And in the credits, it was actually when someone was labeled as Genosha Sentry.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it was Genosha.
So that brings me to Michael Fassbender, and his and the bit of news with him. Michael Fassbender is a big fan of the X-Men. Mm-hmm. He knows the X-Men source material. Even before he was cast as Magneto, so this was a big deal for him being cast as Magneto and everything. He would not do the movie unless they included Genosha.
Oh wow!
In the movie, they had to write it in.
Yeah, I wasn't sure it was Genosha because I always figured Genosha was like almost like a country but everything. But I mean, listen, they made it a spot for
for those of us that know the source material. Yeah. It's a desolate, secluded piece of land where mutants just live, right? Mm-hmm. That's Genosha, right?
And the history of it, too, was like it was a place where they captured mutants. And so he went over there and liberated those mutants and made it their home.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So that was probably
I don't necessarily like that it was like gifted.
Mm-hmm.
So it became like a reservation. Yeah. At the same time, like the government could show up at any time, like they did.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It was different to see Magneto be a peacemaker, and when they show up, be like, "Listen, we don't want no trouble."
Yeah, that helicopter scene though, that was great.
Now, here's the thing: when you guys talk about Michael Fassbender acting, like we know in real life he's not Magneto.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know that. Like if Michael Fassbender shows up, I'm like making sure no coins are on the table and stuff.
Can you imagine having to act what he acted? Pretending to hold a helicopter.
I would have farted so
many times. Literal hot take.
Like that force. That was a lot.
He was like,
Javi, no one
Yo,
can see you.
you saw the,
No one can see
how does he do it? How does he act it where the vein is popping in his head?
Dude,
Like, how does he do that?
That's like that head shaking thing. Like,
It's like he was holding a big invisible ball and just squeezing every muscle, everything in him. Just
you have to know he farted
butt
at least
cheeks
twice.
clenching so tight.
And it was funny because watching it, I'm dying laughing inside, but I'm also like appreciating what he's doing because he's making me believe
Yeah.
he's holding that.
He's got to hold that helicopter
from
you know?
Dark Phoenix.
Yeah.
And we all know how powerful he is as Magneto,
Yeah.
and it's like, damn, he's struggling.
Yeah.
And he's telling the guy, get in the helicopter.
He's like, get in and go.
I thought that was a real cool scene.
what
And you saw because she didn't give that much energy to. She just had her hand out and she was like just moving it up a little bit. And he's on full force, you know.
He was giving it his all.
One of the things that I really like about Michael Fassbender's performance of Magneto is that his body language when he manipulates magnetic force, you get a sense that for him it's really something that he can touch and he feels it. And it's something that he can really bend to his will. Whereas when Ian McKellen was playing the character, he just kind of moved his hands and did the cursory, putting his hand out.
It's like a little Star Warsy.
Yeah, it was very Star Warsy, where like he was more of a conduit for power, whereas Michael Fassbender, like even I was actually watching Days of Future Past yesterday,
Right.
right? When he flung himself onto the train, he extended his arms out, and it was like, you know, like he pulled against something,
Right.
and then he flung himself onto the train, like, and he reached out and he pulled, and he was catapulted like he was using rubber bands or a slingshot or something like that.
Right.
The presence of mind on his part to move in those ways to really make you feel that this is something real
There's
for
a
him.
force he can touch.
There's a
you know?
force that
Right.
he can touch, and it's tangible, you know, to him, and even though we can't see it, right? But
Yeah, he killed it.
he killed
in
it.
that. And then he proceeds to kick Jean out because he sees that with Jean there, it's going to bring nothing but problems.
She's like, I thought you protected mutants. He goes, yeah, I'm protecting them from you. I was like, dang.
Now, the one thing with this being the last X-Men, and this is just being like just a fan and being nitpicky.
No brotherhood.
Yeah. I was, granted, I get that Juggernaut was in Deadpool and that, the rest of the Brotherhood, Mystique is with, them. But I would have loved to have seen Toad there. I would have loved to seen the other Brotherhood of Mutants, Pyro even. I would have loved to see them in there because all I saw was a bunch of mutants I didn't know. So it was like I was looking for someone in the background.
I was waiting for a
Well,
little cameo.
well, in that timeline, Pyro's not there yet.
That's right. Pyro doesn't show up till Iceman and all those.
Till like
Rogue
8
and
years.
stuff
Till like 8
that.
years
I mean,
later.
but still,
Yeah.
there's still, I mean, if we're kind of disillusioning the Wolverine storyline, Sabretooth was a brotherhood, so Sabretooth was around for that.
Yeah, again, it's just something like, again, a little nitpicky on my part, knowing that this
I
is the
wanted
last
some
one.
kind of little cameo.
I wanted to
just
see
like the
somebody.
Dazzler cameo.
Yeah, I wanted to see
something.
somebody in Genosha there because if it's Genosha, it's Magneto, it's the last one. Yeah.
Celine, who's credited as that telepathic mutant, she is actually just as old as Dazzler is in the comics. So she is known in the comics, and she has more powers in the comic book than just being a strong telepath.
Right.
So I mean, that was a cool nod for her, but you never heard her by name.
Gotcha.
So like you had to look, in the credits where it was like, oh, Celine is like, oh, okay, like like she's cool because she was one of the first. I think she was in a Brotherhood as well. She was like one of the first mutants that went against Charles because she could be a telepath.
Right.
And she had something else as well. I forgot her other powers. So that was cool to have her there. A nice little cameo in her action there. But it stunk because you didn't get her by name.
Right. I got you, man. And then one of the interesting things that we forgot before Jean left, because Magneto was like, I'm trying to save my mutants here.
Yeah.
Was he kept asking her, whose blood is that?
Yeah.
Whose blood is on your shirt? And she would never answer him.
because she knows.
Right. So what's it called? So then after Jean Grey leaves the Genosha there, Beast shows up with the X-Plane. And Beast tells Magneto whose blood it was.
Yeah.
And we find that Magneto's like, oh, I want to kill her now.
Beast is like, same.
Well, because he was like, I want to find her. And then
He was like,
goes,
well, you know where to
you
kill
know
her.
what I'm going to do if I find her. And he's just like,
I
you're
know.
coming with me. And that's when
He's
we
like, why
get
do you think I'm here?
and listen, that's that whole second act is where it kind of like draw it out a little bit and got a little slow. But I appreciated everything that happened because the aliens interrogated her father to find where she was going or where she was, you know, and they also showed this whole Magneto scene with Genosha and with her being there.
Yeah.
And this is the part where a lot of the critics were killing this movie. And I got to tell you, I was just...
But what were they saying about that?
They said it went to a crawl. It was, some of the things didn't make sense. But to me, you know what?
What didn't make sense?
I have no idea, man.
It's just like
I
what,
really
you
enjoyed
never
it.
like you can't see Beast going bad for like 5 minutes, you know?
They said that the scene with him and Charles Xavier was awkward. It
How
was
is
supposed to be
It's
awkward.
supposed to be awkward. She just died. You know?
Yeah.
And Charles is sitting here, still sitting on his high horse,
Denying everything.
Not denying it, but Charles comes in talking about, oh, you know, I met her in this, right
This
here
very
in this kitchen,
Yeah.
and you know, and like Charles is still going about business like he didn't do nothing wrong,
Yeah.
and Beast is sitting there stewing like, motherfucker, this is all your fault.
Yeah.
How is like, what did they want it to be?
Exactly. I have no idea, man. And that's why I
I
said
thought it was. I did think it was a little weird that in a house full of children, right, that he has trays of alcohol. I did find that a little weird. I'm
Yeah.
just like,
Children, you
I'm
can
like,
learn, but you can't touch.
Not that I necessarily keep my alcohol locked up,
Right.
but it's kept in one place in the house where we do the drinking.
Kids
Yeah.
now aren't allowed in the kitchen. Like kids can't be in the kitchen.
No, I'm just
Sorry.
saying, like, he literally has like bottles of like full trays of like really top shelf stuff. Not to say the least. I mean, it's good stuff. But like with glasses ready to go and everything, like anywhere he rolls in the house, like, you know what I mean? Like your Professor X, you can literally think the bottle to you anywhere in the house that
Yeah,
you want.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Oh, Hank. Like, you know,
It's too funny, man.
be a good lad.
be a good lad. Fetch me the glass.
And then we get to the last scene, the last part of this movie, which I think just ramped up perfectly and was absolutely amazing. Is we get the New York scene and the final train scene, which is the final fight of this movie. Now, the New York scene alone was absolutely amazing.
It was just a street to the house. That was it.
It was
street
literally
to the house.
a block.
Yeah.
It was one street, one block, and they were going at it to just get inside the
To
house
see who got inside.
because it was the X-Men on one side, and then we had on the other side the Brotherhood of
Kind of like the
Mutants.
Brotherhood of Mutants, you know.
And they were trying to see who could get to her first because they knew Magneto, Beast. They wanted to kill her or get to her.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, here you have Scott Summers with his, you know, his crush, his love that's in there, and with Xavier all trying to protect him to get her back. And you have this fighting of the two sides right there on that street block, and it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
You know, just to see Magneto doing his thing, Beast and Scott Summers fighting pretty much, with Scott trying to blast everyone. And it just looked absolutely amazing. I mean, every part of that I loved. I was looking at you, I'm like, this is awesome.
It was. I feel like that was one of the first times we actually got like a full out X-Men using their powers fight. Like,
Yeah, it was
you know, we've
Stormy's
had
in there.
how many X-Men movies now, and like how many times have you really seen them just duck behind a cover, or, you know, Scott uses one eye beam here for one shot. He might miss or he might make it because they need him to. It's just like, you know, they never really flesh out their powers other than Wolverine using his claws and slashing.
Right.
So, like, you know, even Apocalypse was a big focus on our teenagers using their powers and becoming leaders, you know, when they were scared to. You didn't get that many powers.
Even when Storm uses her powers in other movies, it's to facilitate somebody else doing something. It's not her using her powers to.
Or just call on lightning once.
Right.
You know, like, that's what
Yeah.
she did against Toad.
Right. You never felt like she was a character that was powerful enough to be on the front line of a fight.
Yeah.
You know, she was like pulling strings, like, all right, let's put this wind up so that we can push so and so over there to actually do the thing.
Let me hide you in this fog I can make.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so like she was always an accessory.
Yes, like
so like for her to do something multiple times, you know, call upon different elements.
She put out
multiple
ice out there.
times.
She put wind out there.
you know,
thunder out there.
and then Scott
When they needed
constantly
some-
shooting his beams, like, you know,
It was
whether he was
awesome.
missing or not, you know, that
Yeah.
was cool because he was using his power. Nightcrawler having to flash between both telepaths who were, you know, holding him back. You know, that was so cool.
It really was.
I liked taking it back for a second to the beginning of the movie where I liked how they integrated the mutant powers into the weapon systems
Oh,
of the.
Scott became the
when-
laser beam. From
Yeah,
the
when
ship,
they're like,
you know?
all right, Scott, hit that thing. I'm like, how's he gonna hit it from inside the
Yeah.
Like,
He pulled the Luke Skywalker.
yeah.
Disappears.
No, but they're like, but to me, that is awesome. Why do we need to build a gun into the X-Jet when we have a guy that has eyes, guns for eyes?
Yeah.
Let's build a system where he can use his power, as part of the weapon system of the plane and like incorporate that. And I felt like that was something really cool
And something different that we never saw.
that we
before.
that
It
we
was
never
awesome.
that we never saw.
Now, what was the line that he said to Magneto? Because Magneto was like, "Get out of my way," because he's gonna get to the house before they do.
Don't you fucking touch her.
Yeah.
Oh, Scott Summers. Sometimes you gotta put it on the table, son. Show him what you're working
He
with.
said, but it was more of a.
But when
He still
said
did it
that,
though. He still whipped it out. He gets credit for that.
It was amazing, man. I didn't expect him to say something like that to Magneto of all
Yeah.
people, and it was
Of all
just like,
people.
oh
Listen,
my lord.
When you're that wussy of a person, and you get that hot of a girl, you gotta hold on tight, because you ain't getting that
That
again.
visor on full blast.
Yeah, man, that whole scene was just absolutely crazy, man. And then Magneto brought up the train.
subway, man.
He brought up the subway train up from the bottom and brought it up to the top to kind of
Well,
block
I
them.
mean, in Days of Future Past, we saw not Days of Future Past in Apocalypse, we saw basically Magneto can basically pull up a mountain.
Yeah.
He's got like tremendous power. So like a train.
Redskins Stadium.
Yeah.
He's like, you don't need this.
Yeah,
Ain't no one
man.
playing here. Come on.
So he pulls up the subway to go in between them, and then he gets inside the building. He gets inside the building. He sees Jean Grey there with the Phoenix Force and also the alien. I think the
Vuk,
alien name
yeah.
was Vuk.
Yeah.
VUK. So the Vuk and Jean Grey are there, and he tries to float up to her, or does she pull him up to him?
Well, I think he floated up to her, and then he grabbed the railing, and
Oh, he was gonna
whipped it
stab
out
her
of
with
her,
the
yeah.
railing, and she let it get like near her eye and
Yeah.
her face, and she's like, "This is cute, very nice."
She's
And she just
you
drops
you
it.
came here to kill me, and you couldn't even do that. Let me show you how. Her embracing that
The power.
that power and that darkness
Yeah.
within her own character. Again, you asked me before about Sophie Turner's performance coming off Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
I thought it was very much like her Sansa Stark character,
Yeah.
embracing the coldness,
Mm-hmm.
of her.
You have that raw power.
Yeah, just like I can do this.
Yeah.
And especially when she kind of tells Tyrion or whatever, I used to think you were the cleverest man alive, and then just walks off.
Yeah.
It's like it was kind of like one of those moments, and
Yeah.
she's just like, "You came here to kill me. You couldn't even do that. Let me show you how."
And what did she do to the helmet? Did she bend the helmet into his face,
She's
or
made it like she was
crushing it?
crushing his skull
Oh.
first, and then she ripped it apart and then flung it into him. Which I don't understand how that didn't kill him, but okay.
Yeah, man. So then after Magneto fails, Xavier and Scott Summers finally get in there.
This was a crazy one, though.
And then Xavier's trying to talk to her, and she said something about
You always said you could believe in me.
yeah, you always believe in me. Come prove it.
Yeah.
She's like, walk up here. He goes, what?
Wow, that was.
He was
yeah.
like, wait, Gene, wait, no.
He goes,
But you know I can't.
you know I can't. And she's just like, walk.
She's like,
And-
yes, you can, Charles.
Oh, she mentally makes him walk up the staircase.
That was
oh my
crazy to watch
Lord.
because I feel like that was the longest part of the movie right there because you were just in pain watching it form like oh god
Because you can see him, man. His legs were giving out, and oh god.
because he wasn't even using them.
they were like puppet legs.
Yeah, and she was making him walk up. Oh,
that was nuts. I was like that felt forever.
but then it goes into one of my favorite scenes of this movie, which kind of like hit that emotional aspect of it, which was awesome. He's like, Gene. She's like, she was like, you lied to me. You held things from me. You told me lies and this and that. And he's like, look into my mind. Look into your past. Look into my mind and see what happened. What really happened.
Yeah.
And she looks into it and she sees that the entire time, first of all, she finds out the true story of what happened with her dad. Her dad saying that he didn't want her. He didn't want to be around her. He didn't want any part of her in his life. Right. and you see all the things that he was doing to try to protect her and try to help her through this process of kind of like forgetting the family and moving on and learning her powers and being accepted. And it was just like, wow. And even when she came out of it, you can see that it affected her, that it got to her, that she knows, as messed up as what the things that he did to try to help her, in the end, he was trying to help her.
Well, because of it's the perspective from which she was seeing it. Remember,
exactly.
There's been several movies out that where you have an event and they go through 4 or 5 different people's point of view in it, right? She was looking at the events from her own memories. So she was reliving the emotions of that she was feeling at the time, put into the context of what she knows now, right? So knowing what she knows now she's feeling an emotion a certain way. When she goes into his mind, she's going through his memories, and she's feeling what he was feeling. You can say whatever you want. Your memory won't lie.
Exactly.
Right? So now she's getting to basically experience it through his eyes. So at the very least, even if he made a mistake, she knew in that moment he was just trying to help. Like, you really do love me. Like, you were trying to give me a home. And she says all these things to him.
Right.
You're trying to give me a home. You're trying to give me everything that my dad wouldn't.
Right.
At that time. And it was her seeing it through his eyes. She had to experience what he was experiencing at that time and see that he really tried to convince her father, like, no, we can help her.
Yeah.
And we can all be part of this. And like, she needs her father, like, you know, right now more than ever, you know. And then when the father just flat out refused, and then you see Charles change his demeanor as well towards the father. We can take her.
Yeah.
Like, you can see Charles' anger towards him.
He was upset, definitely. Yeah.
Towards him. Like, how can you cast out a child
right.
like this and whatnot? And then Charles in that moment says, well, I have to be her father. So the only thing that spares her at that moment is for her to think that you're dead. Because if she knows you're alive and that you don't want her, she's going to go into a depression and she's going to go to a very dark place. And he doesn't know if he can.
Right. If he can do anything after that point.
Right.
Yeah. And that was cool, man. He got finally into Jean's heart and mind to get her to calm down and to ease. And that's when the alien race bad guy, Vuk there, which is played by Jessica Chastain, she tries to take on the Phoenix Force. She said, give it to me. He goes, you want it? Here. And she couldn't take all of it, but also at the same time, that's when the Marvel Cinematic Universe soldiers came in.
Yeah.
and shocked all the X-Men and took them away.
The Marvel Cinematic Universe soldiers.
Don't give me that bullshit. What were they? The Mutant Collection Unit? My ass. Okay?
Marvel Cinematic Universe
Dude,
Police.
That was so fucking on the nose, dude. MCU are taking the mutants away.
We are here to commandeer the mutants.
They're coming with us now.
We just bought them. They're coming with us.
All they had to do was like have someone in the way called, I'm Officer Fox and I'm in charge of this scene here. Like,
I mean,
no,
seriously.
You're not. No, you're not.
Yeah, one of the soldiers was Bob Iger. Kevin Feige was one of the lieutenants. Dude, it was so ridiculous. You could see plain and simple. It said MCU in white on these black suits. It stood out so much. It was so funny. And I'm like, oh, come on, guys. The MCU is taking the mutants. I get it. But at the same time, it did lead to a really, really awesome ending, in my opinion. I really enjoyed the ending, the train station, even the look of the train sequence. When you go into the train, it was one side was happened to be the mutants from Magneto, the other side was the X-Men mutants, and they were all tied together.
Yeah,
and they were being held by the MCU soldiers here. And what ended up happening, because this is where they changed the movie. This is why the movie got pushed back a little bit there, is because it said that it looked too much like Captain Marvel's ending. So they had the alien race that's been going after this Phoenix Force show up on the train, which looked pretty cool. Them attacking the train and jumping on the train. And the mutants were like, you need us. You need us to help you. You can't do this on your own," to the soldiers. And sure enough, the soldiers try to take on these guys by themselves, and it wasn't happening.
And Xavier he give his apology to Beast. He
Yeah,
admitted he was wrong.
Yeah, Xavier he finally admitted he was wrong because he saw what ended
Yeah,
up happening.
when they all locked up with collars on their necks and about to get shipped off to a life of servitude. Yeah, now you gonna admit it?
Now looking back after I'm arrested now, yeah, I did wrong.
He's like, looking back that I can't read anyone's minds in this room. Yeah, I fucked up. I fucked up.
Here you go.
He had a Rick James moment. I would like to think that I know better than to go up in somebody's house and put my feet up on their couch. Yeah, I remember going up in Eddie's house and
I did that to you, Charlie Murphy.
I slapped you today. I slapped you tonight.
that was weeks ago.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug. That was so funny, man.
No, I mean, I wanted Beast to be like, "Fuck you, Charles."
Right.
Like, I really
almost.
wanted, like, that's all he needed. Like, in that, "Fuck you, Charles."
But what's it called, man? So the soldiers are starting to attack the alien race there, and they see that they need the help from the X-Men, the mutants, so they release them, and we get a couple of great action sequences, man. One of them that stood out to me, besides just the whole entire thing, was Nightcrawler again getting his chance to shine.
Got the
Yeah.
knife.
He started first of all that the CGI on him disappearing is ridiculous because it was just amazing how he just turned into that mist and then just reappeared somewhere else, and he was tearing shit up with the knife, with his tail. First of all, his tail,
Yeah.
he put it through somebody's neck. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, man. And then we also had Phoenix. She was tied up in the back, and yeah, man, she just
Another cool moment for Storm.
Yeah.
She went out
Again,
there killing it.
Scott, Magneto.
Yeah.
We got the callback to the guns on the train.
Yeah.
That was amazing. And I'm trying to think of anybody else who got to shine. The hair guy, the hair mutant.
Oh yeah. I don't think he got a name.
I'm gonna call him Whiplash.
No. No.
Oh my goodness, man.
But I mean, he got taken out quick. He was the first one before
Yeah.
Celine, or Celine went first.
I think Celine went a little bit later. He got thrown off the train. I
Yeah,
think
they
it
both
was.
got thrown off the train.
But some of the kills that Nightcrawler did, didn't he put somebody in front of the train and disappear?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was one of the aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's not any scene like anybody in there that you saw that had a really good moment in there.
I go back to Nightcrawler.
Yeah.
We've never seen him fight like that. And
No.
then
Only the intro of X2
Yeah.
was the only time you ever seen anything like that.
But even then, he wasn't using like everything. It was mostly based around his ability to
Be
appear and
acrobatic.
reappear.
Yeah.
And then he was using weapons like the use of his tail as a weapon, where not only like he put it through somebody's neck, he broke somebody's neck with it, and like he was fighting multiple people at the same time.
Yeah.
You really got to that was really good, and I
Once
enjoyed.
again, another scene where we had our X-Men being X-Men.
Yeah.
For almost the first time in their cinematic history.
It was awesome to see them fighting together like that, and it was really cool to see some
And
of them.
with Storm, you got a real sense of her level of power.
Man,
Like she's a really powerful mutant.
yeah,
And we hadn't really
seen.
seen.
Well, she's hailed as a god.
Yeah.
There's a reason for it.
I mean, listen, that fighting scene was awesome, and then the X-Men pretty much saved the day again. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of the
Actually,
MCU soldiers.
it was just the Phoenix that really did it.
Yeah, she actually came out and she was like, she tried to give the entire Phoenix Force to the alien Vuk, and she couldn't handle it. And
And started to mess up everything around them. Then she realized, like, if I do this here, then I'm gonna kill everyone.
yeah, so what she ended up taking the alien up into into outer space.
Yep.
And just
And then she embraced the power.
Mhm.
Instead of trying to control it or be afraid of it, she just embraced it and basically she melded with the power.
And I
then
loved when they gave that Phoenix little
Yeah.
photo right there, little photo
was
Phoenix right
awesome.
there. That was great.
yeah.
That's what I needed. I wanted to see the whole time.
It was really good, man, and then that's pretty much the end of the movie. Except we get this, the final goodbyes to the characters of the movie.
Jean Grey School of Mutants.
Right? They changed the name of the school to the Jean Grey School, and you saw that now. I think it was Beast is the headmaster
yes,
of the school. You see
Charles is retired.
Charles is
A
retired.
little Dark Knight Rises scene at the end.
Oh, absolutely. The minute I saw it, I kept thinking of Sansa in The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah,
I was waiting for her to be like behind him at the table behind him with Scott. I'm like, When is this gonna happen?
No, they were on they were on the opposite corner filming at the same time.
You know, but it was awesome to see them get that last chess match. You know, that's
the
that's
callback
been
to the
something-
chess match. You
Yeah.
know.
The chess match has been showing up in these different movies and then playing. You know, even I remember Days of Future Past on the plane to kind of like ease the tension of them fighting and arguing. They played chess for a second there, and it was just really cool to see them because again we're not used to seeing.
Did you miss I don't know if you guys got this. In the other times when they've played chess, Magneto always gets the first move. And this time, Charles had the first move.
Oh, I never noticed
In the
that.
game.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. That's a good catch, man.
Yeah.
And then, so basically, they end with looks like they're both retired from being who they are. You know,
Well, actually, no,
Professor
I don't
X.
think Magneto is retired because you remember he says to Charles, "I want to give you a home now. You saved my life and gave me and offered me a home, and I want to do the same for you." He's still very much in charge of Genosha.
Genosha, yeah.
You know,
But Professor X doesn't look like he's part of the school. But I mean, that's also
He's-
in that time, at that moment.
at that moment,
yeah.
right?
So I mean, and it looks you know like a promising end for them for
Yeah, you
both
saw
of their
the Phoenix
characters.
logo in the sky,
And then you see
too,
the
passing
Phoenix.
by.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Now, at the end of the movie, I heard you know, we found out there was no real post-credit scene, but apparently there is like a orchestra version of the X-Men animated theme. They did something like that at the end, but we didn't stay for that because we kind of were like, well, this is the last one. They're not gonna do something to tag it, you know. So
And we
It was
searched
midnight. We had to work the next day.
so we left.
And
But
we're
anyone
exhausted.
who hasn't seen the movie, man, just, you know, if you want to stay for something like that, you know, just want to give you the heads up that it's there. And again, overall impressions. You hear us talking about this movie. We loved it. You know, I don't. Well, love is a strong word right there, but we definitely liked the movie a lot, and it was a good time at the theater. It was a good time watching this
Yeah, it was
movie.
good fun, real good fun.
Yeah, you know, and I know we're getting a little long on the episode here, so I just want to definitely end this on the, I guess, kind of like ranking with the Fox X-Men Marvel movies. We won't go through all of the movies that came out, but you know, let's include Deadpool, Logan, Wolverine movies, and the X-Men because they all say X-Men in front of them or they're part of the X-Men universe. Where would you kind of
Deadpool says X-Men.
well, the
They go to the X Mansion.
the X Mansion, the
They take
cast
some
of
X-Men. They take, what's his name?
Colossus. And the
And
cast of
Megasonic.
X-Men, the you know, Sophie Turner, Scott Summers, all those people, they showed up really quick in Deadpool 2 for a second there. So they're kind of like considered part of the same family, and they talk about, you know, the Professor X.
I honestly, if you want to do it, that's fine. But I wouldn't rank the Deadpool movies in with the X-Men movies because it would change how you view the X-Men movies, and the Deadpool movies are something different.
Yeah, but they're in them.
Okay,
They're
alright,
they're
okay.
in them. What's it called? What's
just
it
my 2
called?
cents.
Yeah, the first class, not the first class people, the kids from
Yeah.
Days of Future, from Apocalypse. They're in Deadpool for a brief scene, real quick. But like for me, my number one movie with the Fox Marvel is I still go back and forth between X2 and X-Men Days of Future Past. So you could go 1 or 2 with them, and then Logan. I think all the Deadpool movies, if we're gonna include them, they'll be before that. So to me, it's like in the middle of the pack. So I would keep Dark Phoenix like almost tied with the first X-Men, maybe a little less than because the first X-Men was the one that kind of like built it.
Yeah, it was X-Men. They're back.
Yeah.
It jumped off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I would put Dark Phoenix like again right in the middle, right underneath X-Men, but it's still good. I think it's better than First Class. X-Men First Class.
It's better than First Class.
To me, it's definitely better than First Class. Brandon, for you,
I would say the same.
You keep it like right around there.
I would keep it around the same. You know, I would say I didn't enjoy, you know, the first Wolverine movie, and then I hated X3. You know, so I would put those down there. Apocalypse, I would say, is the worst one.
Right.
I would put Apocalypse as the worst because they really did that movie wrong. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's, going bottom up for you, Sanj.
Bottom up.
Yeah, because what would you? Because I know, like Brandon was saying, like Apocalypse and Last Stand, but we also talk about the Wolverine. That's the Wolverine that took place in Japan.
Yeah.
And also the Wolverine that was X-Men Origins was pretty bad too. I mean, where would you kind of keep your Dark Phoenixes above those movies? Or?
Oh yeah, definitely. Dark Phoenix. How many X-Men movies we got? We got the original 3. You got First Class. Days of Future Past. You got Dark Phoenix, so we're up to 6.
Apocalypse.
We got Apocalypse.
and
That's
then
7.
Wolverine movies.
3 Wolverine movies, and then 2 Deadpool movies.
So 12 movies.
So
in
12
total.
movies in total, and Dark Phoenix would have to be in the top 5 of those 12
Your
because
top 5. Okay.
for me the best is always going to be Days of Future Past.
You like that one?
I
a lot,
thought I felt like that should have been the
I
ending.
feel like that was it.
It
It was supposed to be.
was supposed to be, yes. We can go into that news another time, but that I felt would have been a great ending because it took all the elements of X-Men that we really really cling to, Wolverine, Magneto, and Charles Xavier. Like that's what the X-Men hinge on. Those
Yeah.
3 right there. And I think everyone else comes next. I'm not saying second, but next.
Yeah.
So Days of Future Past is the best. X2 from there, right?
Mhm.
X-Men. That's X-Men United, right? Yes. I would have to say after that, Logan.
Mm-hmm.
Even though again, I can overlook as far as the quality of the movie. If we're just looking at it as a movie, the story was really good.
Yeah.
How it was done, like the emotions that you got out of it.
Yeah.
It would be Logan, and then right after that is Dark Phoenix. I don't think, to me, I wouldn't compare the Deadpool movies to Dark Phoenix. I think they're just different.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Dark Phoenix would come in 4th in my,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
that puts it really high up there.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, they've got some stinkers in the
X-Men Origins. Oh,
Yeah, that Wolverine.
that
X-Men
Wolverine
Origins.
was bad, man.
That's why I don't understand. Like, there's certain people, like I said, one of the guys I listen to, his name is Jeremy Johns. He's fantastic. I've been listening to that guy for the last like 6 years or 7 years of my life, and he said it was the worst one out of all the X-Men, and I'm like, there's no way that's possible. And I'm thinking, you know what it might be? A lot of the people who hate it like that might be comic book fans or like comic book diehards that look for the story that they read. Or maybe they're looking for something else individual. Again, it's opinion based, so he might just not even have read any of this shit. And
the
just thinks
CGI
that.
claws compared to what they did 2 years ago with the regular claws, I was like, that was so unneeded.
Yeah.
And then the treatment of the story, the treatment of Deadpool, it's just like that whole movie was just a bleh.
Yeah.
I would say on the same par as Apocalypse.
Yeah,
movie.
I mean, I think at worst, and not for me, at worst, the movie is probably out of 12 or out of 10 would be like 8.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I just don't get where all the hate comes from. And again, it's not the worst X-Men movie.
No, Apocalypse was.
There's no reason why Rotten Tomatoes should have this movie listed as the worst X-Men movie rated because it's not anywhere near the worst X-Men movie.
That's the fans there. That's
That's
this new 4 years fan thing that's happened lately. In the last 4 years is the fans just control everything. I mean, when you look at the petitions that we were talking about earlier, the fans want to control how these movies are being made, and if it's not made to their standards from their understanding of the stories, then they're not happy with it. Like we go back to the Martha thing all the time. Like everyone's like, oh, that was corny, that was stupid. I was like, but you didn't think of that, and you never would have thought about that until they did that. That's genius.
And it comes back to as entrenched as I am in Batman and Superman and all of the, I had never realized that both, and the thing is, I know who Martha Kent is. I know clearly that her name is Martha.
Yeah.
And I've known for as long as I can remember, her name is Martha.
Yeah.
Right? And then I know Batman's mother's name is also Martha Wayne. I just never put two and two together.
I was like, and whoever did, you were genius.
Genius.
You were
Genius moment.
And you can call it whatever you want. Stupid, corny, crazy, whatever. Genius because you never thought of it.
And when he's literally there killing him, and then Superman yells out, "You're killing Martha." And especially everything that Batman was going through, like in his mind at that point, like, come on, really?
So like, to say Dark Phoenix is the worst is like, did you understand any of the X-Men movies before that? Like, have you only watched X-Men Apocalypse and then Dark Phoenix?
Yeah, exactly, man. So again, everybody, if you're listening,
the directors and the writers and everybody get put in a very hard position because they have to write movies for people like us that know a lot
Mhm.
about the characters and the story and everything, and then they have to write for people that know nothing.
Exactly.
And they have to write for everybody in between as well. And no matter what, there's going to be a large contingent of people that hate your movie, that absolutely hate your movie, and they're going to be very vocal about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what maybe that's what's happening with
With Dark Phoenix.
yeah, like that whatever whichever group it is that's not loving the story right now, they're the ones being the most vocal about it, you know. And that's what's happening.
Yeah, man,
Agreed.
absolutely, man. All right, we're gonna wrap it up right here. And again, as always, we just want to thank you guys for listening to our podcast. This is the Real Fan Review. It's a weekly conversation that we have about movies and the movies trailers and movie news. And we always want to thank all our listeners. It's kind of funny. Last week we were we were talking about where we're getting our listeners from that listen outside of the United States, and we never had Russia before. So Brandon started asking for Russia to listen to us. And literally that last episode, Russia, we got one.
Hey, shout out to Russia.
The
And
Russian
thank you.
Federation.
And the offer still stands. If you drop us an email with your information, the first 3, I have to specify the first 3 to drop us an email. Send us your information. I will send you a shirt
All
with-
right, so that's
with
it.
with your name on it.
Yeah, there we go, man. So you got an opportunity to get a t-shirt from us. Just shoot us an email at therealfanreview@gmail.com, or if it's easier for you, just go to our website, therealfanreview.com. There's a comment section. Just put a comment on there, put your email on there. We'll definitely send you out one shirt there. Just let us know your size and everything too, so we'll make sure we get the right shirt for you. But also send us an email or contact us. Let us know if there's a topic or a discussion you want us to have around movies that something that you love or think about that you want us to, you want to hear our take on it. Send us a shout. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And this is going to be us for this week. We'll see you guys next week. From Hav, Sanj, and B, we thank you for listening. And welcome to the Real Fan Review one more time.